All right. So, as you know, our speaker today is Dr. Therriault. She is a licensed Unity teacher, and she is also a planetary geologist, and she's a mom. She's got three lovely kids and a beautiful grandson. And yeah, if you want to know more about Anne, just ask her anytime. I'm sure she'll fill you in. And I'm just going to let it go, and invite her to join us now.
Well, good morning, beautiful souls. Well, last week, Rev C helped us discover who was Elizabeth Sand Turner. Today, I'd like to share a few of my reflection after reading her book, Be Ye Transform, which was published in 1969. Yeah, just that's a few years after I was born. Anyway, in this book, she explores the early Christian church, the ministry and epistles of Paul, the general epistles, and the mystical book of Revelation. And she provides a metaphysical interpretation for all these scriptures. Poof. It's not a light read, I must say. In the 1950s, she had already metaphysically interpreted the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, which Debbie is going to cover next week, and then the Gospel, which Rev C covered last week. And she did that using Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary and the Revealing Word. So it is at the request of many people that Elizabeth St. Turner embarked on metaphysically interpreting the rest of the Bible. I find it a lot of work to metaphysically interpret just one passage of the Bible. I can't imagine doing the whole thing. And that's what she did. So in her third book, which covers the New Testament minus the Gospels, in addition to metaphysically interpret all the scriptures, she offers historical context, commentary, and all this based on what was known in the late 1960s. So, if you're looking at the book, be conscious about that. So, she shows us how Jesus's early followers grew beyond their limited understanding and began using their spiritual faculties more consciously. And as they did, something remarkable happened. Their inner light began to shine. The title of her book, Be Ye Transformed, is inspired from the Roman scripture, chapter 12, verses 2, which reads this way: Do not be conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Using this quote from Paul, Elizabeth St. Turner deduces that the way we can bring forth transformation is by the renewal of the mind. She states that the ignorance and inertia resulting from a lack of knowledge and the lack of using our spiritual faculties, these are the obstacles, the great obstacles for us to overcome. From her book, we see how early Christians made use of Jesus's teachings, and we learn how we, in turn, can make use of their stories, their accomplishments and failures to develop our inherent spiritual faculties. In particular, she shows how Paul's transformation led him to teach people to transform themselves. But note that she does caution us that much of what Paul wrote has little application to our life. It's kind of funny, but it is the idea of transformation that I would like to explore with you today in relation to Paul's quote from Romans 2:12, which is, Be ye transformed. And more specifically, why transformation requires discipline, why it does not require suffering, and why stillness is essential to the process. First, let us look at transformation requiring self-discipline, resistance of the ego. Elizabeth St. Turner describes how what happened to Paul is symbolic of what happens to in us as truth penetrates the mind, and how Paul's journeys are more than historical events. She firmly believed that spiritual illumination can only come, as Paul's life demonstrates, if it only comes if one speaks the word faithfully and untiringly. From her book and our own personal experiences, we understand that transformation is not always an easy thing, right? Elizabeth St. Turner uses the conversion of Saul, to later be named Paul, to demonstrate how difficult this transformation can be, both within ourselves and in the outer world. What do we meet? We meet opposition. However, Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, in his metaphysical interpretation of the word Lystra, which is a city where Paul preached often, Charles writes that spirit does not arouse combativeness. Opposition comes from the personal. So Unity teaches that complete freedom from the personal, well, it is obtained when we reach our Christ consciousness. So this is not something that we can achieve by just acknowledging our indwelling Christ, and nor by just accepting the truth that anything emanating from our higher self is good, and therefore prayers will always manifest from this truth. There is more to be done. We have free will. And will is the executive power of the mind, and the use of it is essential. However, we must ensure that it is guided by our power of wisdom and not just our ego self. Think of the Unity Fifth principle. I live the truth that I know. Too often, we depend upon ourself, our ego, or other people for a solution, right? And in reality, we have to go within. Our theme of this year, the divine within, well, we have to go within to know how, to know that our highest wisdom, and sometimes, when we are relying on other people, so to know that their highest wisdom is at play. So just like Paul, we must persist in our work to spiritual illumination. So as long as we allow erroneous thoughts and feelings to remain in our consciousness, as long as we continue to carry injustice, intolerance, falsehood, and hatred in us, we cannot be truly free to transform. We must overcome our ego needs and our ego voice and surrender to our divine qualities that makes us fully divine. In Unity, we often speak about denials and affirmation. I sometimes think of it as doing a spiritual spring cleaning, clearing out the dusty old beliefs that have been sitting in the attic for so many years. It's purification of some sort. Let me give you some examples of denials and affirmation that I use. Here's one. I give no power to the past experiences which no longer serve me. I am life. I am love. I claim my abilities to forgive, and I cut myself some slack. There's one. And there's another one. I breathe out frustration and worry. And I breathe in. And as I'm breathing in, I am filled with the light of truth that illuminates my mind and shines from within my heart. See, the idea of using the denials is to let go of the erroneous thoughts and the feelings, clear the consciousness and be truly free to transform. And to do that, I'm guiding this transformation with affirmations. So back to the idea that transformation requires self-discipline. Now, I know that word discipline doesn't always make us jump with joy. But when I speak of discipline here, I am not referring to training. It's true, though, that we should train our mind, and thus this speaks of self-discipline too. And let me give an example. Think of your mind as an animal left untrained. It runs wherever it wants, pulled by fear, craving, irritation, or distraction. Huh, I have a dog like that. She will take off on me and follow the squirrels or the deer all the way to the neighbor's land. And you have to realize that we have 10 acres of land ourselves. That's a lot of running for me to do. But anyway, through steady practice, attention, awareness, and compassion, the mind can gently be trained, not forced, but by consistent returning. In the case of my dog, a leash will do. When I speak of spiritual discipline, it is about making the choice to go within and listen to your inner voice and not the ego voice. Again, our theme of the year, divine within us, right? It is recognizing the noises and distraction and choosing to listen to truth. To illustrate this concept, let me share with you a Sufi story I heard from a Sufi master. Here goes the story. A student went to his teacher and complained, Master, whenever I sit to pray or meditate, I'm distracted. Flies buzz around me, land on me, and disturb my concentration. I cannot find peace. What should I do? And the teacher listened and then said, First, tell me, when you are not at prayer, do the flies bother you? And the student replied, No, not really. So the teacher smiled gently. And the student looked puzzled. So what should I do about the flies? He asked. And the teacher answered, Do not chase them. Do not fight them. If you chase one away, another will come. If you fight them, you will only be disturbed. So be still, sit, let them come and go, and return your attention again and again to what is real. Wow. In this story, the flies are thoughts emanating from our ego voice, restless, insistent, seeking our attention. Transformation happens not by battling them, but by choosing again and again where to place our attention. And the more often you make this recognition and choice, the better you will be at self-discipline, enabling spiritual transformation. Now, let us look at transformation and how it does not mean suffering or a testing of fate. It is true that spiritual ideas may bring trials as they uncover false beliefs or other subconscious behavior that we are unaware and for which we have to do the work to rectify. Still, that does not mean that we have to suffer if we want to transform, to spiritually eliminate. Isn't it funny, though, that we often endure all manner of distress or pain rather than give up our unhealthy habits of thoughts and action? And why is that? And to alleviate that suffering, we seek help from the outer world rather than go within and follow our highest wisdom, which always guides us to our highest good. You know, as Elizabeth St. Turner puts it, we want to change the condition, but we have great aversion to changing ourselves. So this clinging to old taught patterns while asking the one power, one presence to change our outer circumstances, it's as if saying, well, I want to change, but I don't want to do anything about it. So sometimes transformation is not painful because it must be. It is painful because we resist it. It is interesting how often we resist the very change that would free us. I do have a Bible example to illustrate this, and it's the story of the Israelites. And I must say it's a story, right? There's no proof that this actually happened, but the clearest passages about this story are found in the books of Exodus and Numbers. And according to the Bible story, the Israelite lived for generations, for many generations as slaves in Egypt. With Moses as their leader, they were finally liberated and began a long journey through the wilderness or the desert toward a promised land of freedom and abundance. But their journey was difficult and uncertain, and it taking years. And at times, the people grew discouraged and afraid. And in fact, in Exodus 16, the people became so discouraged that they complained and they said, oh, let us go back to Egypt. At least there we had food. Really? After all that work getting out of slavery, now they want to go back? So, in other words, they preferred the familiarity of bondage to the discomfort of transformation. Metaphysically, Egypt represents the old habits, limiting thinking, and belief that keep us bound. And the wilderness, well, that represents that in between place where the old is falling away, but the new has not yet fully appeared. It is the uncomfortable transition of transformation. And the promised land, well, that symbolizes the higher consciousness or spiritual freedom. And so the question for us is this: where are we resisting the very transformation that would set us free? In the story of the Israelite, the wilderness is not a punishment, it's a passage. Transformation does not ask us to suffer, it asks us to trust and to keep moving forward. And the one thing we must remember is that we are never alone. We are guided, sustained, and led by the very presence within us. The Israelites' struggle is our struggle, not because we are weak, but because we are human and we cling to what we know. But spiritual discipline invites us into a different way. It asks us again and again not to go back to Egypt, to old thoughts, old fears, old identities. It asks us to keep turning within, to listen for the voice of truth and to follow it, even when the way feels uncertain. That is the path of transformation. Not suffering, but faithful returning. Perhaps the real question is not, why is transformation so hard? But rather, why do we keep choosing what keeps us bound? Freedom is before us. The way is within us. And every moment gives us a choice: return to Egypt or move forward into truth. So perhaps transformation is not meant to break us, but to free us from what we were never meant to carry. And when it feels painful, it may not be because the path is wrong, but because something within us is still holding on. And in that moment, we are invited, not forced, but invited to release, to trust, and to move forward into the life that is already seeking to emerge within us. Finally, let us look at why stillness is essential to the process of transformation, spiritual illumination. Transformation is not just busy work. It is first and foremost about being still to allow for what we have learned, so that what we are learning is sinking in. It is contemplation and it is discernment. When faced with hardship, I usually like things to go quickly. I don't want to linger in the situation or the feelings nor the emotion that go with it. But I now understand that transformation or spiritual illumination is a gradual process, requiring me to manifest my power of faith and especially my patience. Yep, need to practice that patience. Elizabeth Sandturner reminds us that transformation does not happen instantly. She writes, "It is impossible to move from the human to the spiritual plane in the twinkling of an eye. Spiritual illumination is a gradual unfolding. Great. Sometimes we feel very close to the Christ within, and other times we feel lost in the wilderness, just like the Israelites. But every time we pause, every time we turn within, every time we listen for that still small voice, we move a little closer to the truth of who we are." Charles Fillmore taught us that we have both an outer church and an inner church. And this inner church is the most important one. It is a sanctuary of spiritual ideas revealed by the indwelling Christ. And perhaps the real invitation of transformation is this: visit your inner church. Not just on Sunday, not only when life gets difficult, but every day. Take time to be still. Listen. Release what no longer serves you, and allow the Christ within to do its transforming work. So this week, I invite you to ask yourself a gentle question. What belief, habit, or fear might be asking to be released so that something new can emerge? Because transformation is not about forcing change. Be gentle. It is about letting the divine life within us unfold. And when we do that, when we quiet the mind, release the ego, and trust the presence within, we discover that the transformation we seek has been quietly happening all along. So today, continue to be still, let go, and let God. And so, as we return to Elizabeth Sandturner's premise that the way we can bring forth transformation is by the renewal of the mind, we begin to see that transformation is not a single moment, but a way of living. It asks something of us, but not what we may have thought. It asks for discipline, not hardness, not harshness, but the faithful willingness to return again and again to the voice of truth. It asks us to release the idea that we must suffer our way into transformation, and instead to notice where we are resisting the very good that is seeking to unfold. And it asks us to enter into stillness, to pause, to listen, and to trust the quiet work of spirit within us. Discipline without struggle. Growth without suffering. Transformation grounded in stillness. So this week, I invite you into a simple spiritual practice. Each day, take a few moments to be still. And in that stillness, gently notice, where am I being called to return to truth? What am I resisting that might actually be here to free me? And can I trust the presence within me just a little more today? Not perfectly, not all at once, but faithfully. And because transformation is not something we force into being, it is something we allow. And as we choose moment by moment to listen more deeply, to release more willingly, and to rest more fully in that still small voice within, we discover that we are already on holy ground. We have found our inner church. The wilderness becomes a pathway. The struggles becomes practice. And the life within us begins to shine. So today and in the days to come, be disciplined in love. Release the need to suffer. Enter into stillness and let the transformation presence of oneness reveal what is already whole, already free, and already divine within you. And now, let us take a moment to turn within. I will be offering you a guided meditation. I invite you to gently close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or just lower your gaze. Allow your body to settle comfortably. Let your hands rest gently in your lap, and bring your awareness to your breath. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently release it. Again, breathing in and breathing out. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest and belly. Inhale, exhale. Let each breath bring you more fully into this moment. Now, as you breathe, let your body soften. Release any tensions in your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, your hands. Let it all melt into the presence of peace. Let the rhythm of your breath bring you into a place of stillness. As the body relaxes, allow the mind to become quiet and the heart to become open. Allow your mind to clear and release all thoughts. If any thoughts arise during this meditation, just say the word thought and return to following your breath. Now, imagine yourself standing on a quiet path in the wilderness, not a harsh place, but a wide, open landscape. The air is calm, the sky stretches endlessly above you. This wilderness represents that sacred space of transformation, that place between what was and what is becoming. Like the Israelite on their journey, like Paul on the road to a new understanding, we too walk paths of interchange. Sometimes the wilderness feels uncertain. Sometimes we may even feel tempted to return to the familiar patterns of the past. But in this moment, simply stand here in this expanse, breathing, resting, trusting. For even in the wilderness, the presence of oneness is here. Feel that presence now, quiet, steady, loving. The same presence that guided the Israelites, the same presence that transformed Paul, the same presence that lives within you. And in the stillness, you may sense a gentle light awakening within your heart, a light of wisdom, a light of peace, a light of divine guidance. There's nothing you need to force, nothing you need to struggle with. Transformation is already unfolding. Your only task is to be still, to listen, to trust. Silently affirm within yourself, the light of Christ within me guides my path. I release the past and welcome transformation. In stillness, I am renewed. The light of Christ within me guides my paths. I release the past and welcome transformation. In stillness, I am renewed. Rest for a moment in that awareness, allowing the peace of the divine presence to fill your mind and heart. And now, gently bring your awareness back to the room. Become aware of your breath once again. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes. Grounded, clear, filled with stillness. Carry this stillness with you as you continue your journey, trusting that the divine presence within you is always guiding you forward. And so it is.